This is how to draw 732 using the solid object removal technique, where we start with a big block that represents the entire object, and then you draw on individual shapes and remove parts of the block, much like you're taking a shape and cutting it out of styrofoam or something like that. So for example, we'll start with the big block that represents the shape. We'll then create a sketch on the front view of it and draw that rectangle and remove the material behind it, like we did on 733. We'll then draw a sketch on the top shape and remove the circle and the rectangle here down. We'll then draw a sketch on either the inside or the outside shape, draw the rectangle and remove through. This is not the most efficient way to create the shape, but it gets you used to having to use the remove method that is sometimes useful on more complex shapes. So let's go back to my shape. I see I'm going to start with a rectangle that's 1.5 by 2.25 by 1.5 tall. So I'm going to make that rectangle in my top view. New sketch. Hide all my views. If you want, you can just type in the numbers into the shape as you're making it. So it's 4.5, 2 1/4, and 1.5 tall. So now I have my block. Now I want to remove the top portion from the front view. And so I can see that the front view is 3/4 thick shelf, two-tiered shelf on this side, and it's 3/4 from the base. So in my Onshape drawing, I'll create a sketch on the front view of my object. And just draw a rectangle that exceeds the bounds of my object. And then make it 3/4 from the outside of my object to the inside of the rectangle. And from the bottom of my object to the bottom edge of the rectangle. If I needed to, I could drag this other side of the rectangle wherever I needed it to, but as long as it goes beyond the bounds of your shape, it doesn't matter. So now I can say extrude, orbit a little bit. I'm going to say remove again. Now I'm going to go all the way. So I could either just drag it a distance beyond beyond what's necessary. I could type in a distance too big, or I can say through all. Okay. Now I'm going to do the second part, where I draw on the top sketch here. I'm going to draw the rectangle and the circle, and extrude, remove those down. So I'll put a sketch on the top of my surface. Draw the rectangle that's missing on the right side, making sure not to snap or constrain the rectangle to anything in particular, and the circle in the middle. Again, making sure not to snap or constrain the circle to anything in particular. Now go back and look at my dimensions. So I see the center of the circle is 2 1/4 away from the right side of our object. and 1 1/8 from the back of our object, and it's 7/8 in diameter. So now I'll dimension from the edge of my object to the center of the circle is 2 1/4. From the center of my circle to the back edge of my object, it was 1 1/8. And 7/8 in diameter. Now I'll figure out where the rectangle goes. I see that the rectangle is 1.5 inches back from the front edge and 5/8 from the right edge. So dimension from the front edge to the rectangle was 1.5. And from the outside edge of my object to the inside edge of the rectangle was 3/4. No, 5/8, I'm sorry. Had I entered the wrong dimension, I could have just double-clicked it and typed the correct one in. All right, so now I want to remove those areas. So I can click extrude. I can say remove. And if I needed to, I could go click or unclick parts I didn't want to remove or I wanted to remove. I could have also drawn the rectangle up here and done it as 2 steps and only removed a portion of the shelf that sticks up in a separate operation from this extrude. But I wanted to get used to doing this technique. I'll say okay. All right, the last part of my object, I see I'm missing a corner here on the back shelf, and I see that that corner is 1/2 inch away from the top shelf, and it starts 1 1/8 from the back edge. So I could either put that rectangle on this surface here, or on the back surface there. So right click, new sketch, view from the left side, and since I'm viewing from the left side, the rectangle's missing from the right of my object. Making sure not to snap to any midpoints anywhere. I'll over exaggerate on purpose. If I was drawing it from the other direction, I just want to make sure I draw it from the left side of my object. So we said it was 1/2 down and 1 1/8 away. Edge of my object to edge of the rectangle, 1 1/8. And if it ever makes it really big, you can just hit escape and drag it proportionally back to where you think it should be. I'll dimension now from the top edge down to where the rectangle or the shelf starts, and now it's 0.5 or 1/2 inch. It doesn't really matter that the rectangle's so big, but just so that I can see it all on the screen easier, I'll make it a little bit smaller. It makes no difference whatsoever though when you do the extrusion. So now I'll say extrude, remove, and I can push the volume through. And okay. And that's the last part. To turn the object in, you're going to want to show the dimension that the sketch that has the most features on it. So probably sketch 3 here. If you did it the same way I did, you'd want to see that sketch. Unfortunately, you can't show more than one sketch at a time when you see dimensions. So you can see how that's hard to show. So just show the one with the top dimensions, and that'll give me enough information to know if you did it correctly. If you want to know the volume, you can click on the part in the parts list, and then click the mass properties scale down at the bottom, and we can see that the volume is 7.283. All surface area is 32.734, or if I click on individual parts, let's turn a few of these sketches off here, I can find just the surface area of that portion. Different ways to check to see if you got it right. Okay, thank you very much.